Welcome the rare gems. Some women demand attention, others attract it effortlessly. But then, there are Sigma females, the ones who don't seek the spotlight, yet somehow, it always finds them. People stare, not just because of how they look, but because of the energy they carry. It's the kind of presence that unsettles, intrigues, and commands curiosity all at once. You might wonder why strangers hold their gaze a second too long, or why people seem both drawn to you and intimidated at the same time. It's because you don't fit the usual mold. You move differently, think independently, and radiate a quiet confidence that's rare in a world obsessed with validation. You don't perform for approval. You exist on your own terms. And that disrupts expectations. Being a Sigma female isn't always easy. You'll be misunderstood, underestimated, and sometimes even resented for simply being yourself. But that's the price of standing apart. While others conform, you build. While others seek permission, you move forward. And while others need the crowd, you thrive in your own company. So if people stare, let them. You weren't meant to blend in. You were meant to be noticed, not for what you say, but for who you are. Number 1. She's too unbothered to be normal. Most people move through life carefully adjusting themselves to fit in, checking their words, their expressions, their reactions, always calculating how others might perceive them. A Sigma female? She simply exists. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable, nor does she exaggerate to seek attention. And that kind of raw, unfiltered presence makes people stare. It's not arrogance, it's not coldness, it's something deeper, detachment from the need to be liked. She doesn't walk into a room wondering if people will approve of her. She doesn't second-guess herself to avoid making waves. She's not performing. She just is. And that's unsettling to those who have spent their entire lives bending to the opinions of others. Most people are wired to seek validation. They crave reassurance that they're attractive, interesting, or important. But when they come across a woman who isn't looking for their approval, who doesn't flinch under judgment or adjust herself for praise, it throws them off. They don't know what to do with someone who isn't playing the same game. People stare because they're trying to figure her out. How does she move with so much confidence without external validation? Why does she seem so unaffected by social expectations? They watch, hoping to catch a glimpse of self-doubt, but they rarely find it. And that frustrates them. This kind of unbothered energy is rare, and with rarity comes discomfort. Some admire it, some resent it. Some are drawn to it but don't understand why. But one thing is certain, they all notice it. The truth is, being truly unbothered is a form of quiet power. It means your mood isn't dictated by the opinions of strangers. It means you're not available for pointless drama or emotional manipulation. And it means you walk through life with an effortless kind of confidence that makes people stare, not because you ask them to, but because they can't look away. Number 2. Her gaze feels surgical, not casual. Most people look at others the way they're expected to, brief glances, polite smiles, and surface-level acknowledgement. But a Sigma female, she doesn't just look, she dissects. Her gaze isn't about admiration, judgment, or social pleasantries. It's about understanding. When she looks at someone, she's not scanning for appearances or seeking approval. She's reading beyond what's being presented, assessing body language, detecting inconsistencies, and mapping out unspoken truths. And that's exactly why people feel exposed under her stare. It's unsettling because most people are used to being seen in a certain way, through a social filter that focuses on charm, status, or outward behavior. They're accustomed to interactions where people respond to their performance, not their reality. But a Sigma female doesn't play by those rules. She sees through the performance. She notices the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in tone, the small hesitations that betray real emotions. And when someone realizes they're being truly seen, not flattered, not dismissed, but analyzed, it shakes them. They suddenly feel like they're under a microscope, like their usual defenses aren't enough. That's why some people avoid her gaze altogether. It's too raw, too exposing. Others are drawn to it, fascinated by the fact that, for once, they can't hide behind their usual masks. This ability isn't about intimidation, it's about precision. A Sigma female doesn't waste energy on assumptions or gossip. She gathers information directly, picking up details that most overlook. She doesn't react to what people want her to see. She reacts to what's actually there. And that's why people stare back, part intrigue, part discomfort, because deep down they know she's seeing things they don't even admit to themselves. Number 3. She's attractive in a way that defies beauty norms. Most people are used to a certain kind of beauty, the kind that's carefully curated, polished to perfection, and designed to fit a familiar mold. They expect attraction to follow a script, a specific look, a predictable style, a socially approved presentation. But a Sigma female? She doesn't follow the script. And that's exactly why people can't stop staring. Her beauty isn't the type that begs for attention. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." It simply exists, unapologetically. She doesn't rely on heavy embellishments or exaggerated efforts to fit a standard. She's attractive in a way that feels almost rebellious, unbothered, effortless, and rooted in something deeper than appearances. What makes her so captivating is presence. It's in the way she carries herself, the way she moves, the way she speaks when she actually chooses to. There's no desperation to be liked, no anxious need for approval, and that kind of self-possession makes people take a second look, then a third, trying to pinpoint why she stands out. She might not be the loudest in the room, nor the one dressed to impress, yet somehow, eyes always find her. Not because she's performing, but because she isn't. There's no pretense, no artificial charm, just a raw, effortless magnetism that refuses to be defined by trends or expectations. And that confuses people. They're used to attraction being obvious, glossy, predictable, carefully constructed. But with her, it's different. It's in the details most overlook, the way she holds eye contact without hesitation, the quiet confidence in her posture, the way she seems completely at peace in her own skin. People stare, trying to figure it out. But the truth is, her beauty isn't meant to be understood. It's meant to be felt. And that's what makes it impossible to ignore. Number 4. She gives off the "I know something you don't" vibe. Most people are predictable. They wear their thoughts on their faces, spill their emotions into conversations, and fill every silence with words, sometimes just to feel heard. A Sigma female? She's different. She doesn't rush to explain herself, doesn't broadcast every detail of her life, and doesn't feel the need to prove what she knows. And that's exactly why people stare. There's something about her presence that makes others curious. She could be sitting quietly in a room, saying nothing, yet people still feel her energy. It's the way she listens, not just hearing words, but processing them, filtering through what's real and what's just noise. She doesn't react like most people would. She doesn't jump to agree, doesn't scramble to fill silences, doesn't hand out her thoughts like free samples. And that unsettles people. They wonder, what does she know? Why is she so calm? What's going on in her mind? They stare, trying to decode her, searching for hints in her expressions, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever secret she's holding. But that's the thing. There's no performance, no intentional air of mystery. She's simply selective. Not everyone deserves access to her thoughts. Not every situation requires a reaction. And this level of restraint makes people uncomfortable because they're not used to it. Most people are conditioned to overshare, to prove themselves, to seek validation through words. When someone doesn't do that, it creates an irresistible intrigue. Some people admire it, others find it intimidating, but no one can ignore it. Because in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the one who chooses silence is the one people can't stop watching. Number 5. She's the walking antithesis of neediness. Most people crave validation, whether they admit it or not. They lean into conversations with the hope of being liked, drop subtle hints to fish for compliments, and carefully curate their words to avoid disapproval. It's an invisible hunger, this need to be seen, accepted, and reassured. But a Sigma female? She doesn't operate like that. And that's exactly why people can't stop staring. There's no social desperation in her presence. No silent bids for attention. No subconscious neediness that most people unconsciously emit. She's comfortable in her own space, fully at ease whether she's surrounded by people or completely alone. She doesn't engage in performative friendliness, doesn't chase validation, and certainly doesn't go out of her way to make others feel comfortable at her own expense, and that throws people off. They expect at least a little bit of effort, a slight need to impress, a subtle attempt to fit in. But she gives them nothing. Not coldness, not hostility, just an undeniable absence of neediness. And that level of emotional self-sufficiency is so rare that it makes people uncomfortable, because most people don't know what it's like to not seek approval. They don't know how to exist without constantly wondering how they're being perceived, but she does. And that challenges everything they know about social interactions. Some find it intriguing. Others feel strangely intimidated. They stare, trying to figure out what makes her different, why she doesn't need the same unspoken reassurances they do. And the truth is simple. She doesn't crave external validation because she's already validated herself. And when someone carries that kind of quiet, unshakable confidence, the world can't help but notice. Number 6. She feels like a wild card in a world of predictable players. Most people follow a pattern. Their personalities, their reactions, the way they present themselves, it's all fairly predictable. You can categorize them easily: the people pleaser, the dominant leader, the quiet introvert, the social butterfly. But a Sigma female? She doesn't fit neatly into any of these boxes. And that's exactly why people stare. She exists in a space outside the usual categories. She can be warm when she chooses to be, yet she never bends to social pressure. She can be ruthless when necessary, yet she isn't heartless. One moment, she's reserved, almost untouchable, and the next, she's intensely present, cutting through conversations with sharp insight. People can't pin her down, they can't label her, and that bothers them. Society likes things to be definable. It expects women to be either soft or strong, submissive or dominant, nurturing or independent. A Sigma female refuses to be just one thing. She embodies contradictions without forcing herself to explain them. And that throws people off because they're used to women who signal their role, who make it clear whether they're playing the good girl, the rebel, the nurturer, or the boss. With her, there's no script to follow, no obvious personality type to predict. She can be deeply kind, yet completely uninterested in pleasing anyone. She can be private, yet disarmingly direct. She can walk into a room and blend into the background until she speaks, and suddenly, all eyes are on her. People stare because they're not sure what they're looking at. They try to categorize her, figure out her angle, understand where she fits in the social landscape, but she doesn't fit. And she never will. That's the thing about wild cards. They don't play by the rules, and that makes them impossible to ignore. Number 7. She looks like she doesn't care because she doesn't. Most people pretend they don't care what others think. They say things like, "I don't need anyone's approval," while subtly adjusting their tone, their outfit, or their opinions to avoid judgment. It's a performance. One that's so common, most people don't even realize they're doing it. But a Sigma female, she doesn't perform. She genuinely does not care. And that's exactly why people stare. It's not that she's rude, arrogant, or dismissive. It's just that she isn't controlled by external validation. She doesn't soften her edges to make others comfortable, doesn't rush to explain herself, and doesn't shape her identity based on how people perceive her. And that kind of real freedom is something most people don't have. They see it in the way she moves, unrushed, unbothered, uninterested in impressing anyone. They hear it in her voice, calm, steady, without a trace of desperation. She doesn't seek approval, but she also doesn't reject it out of rebellion. She simply exists on her terms, without the need to be liked, feared, or admired. And this makes people uneasy, because deep down, they crave that kind of liberation. They wish they could walk into a room without overanalyzing how they're being perceived. They wish they could speak without filtering every word through the lens of social approval. They wish they meant it when they said, "I don't care." So they stare at her, trying to figure out how. How did she free herself from the invisible chains they still wear? How did she become so untouchable by opinions? How does she move through the world without that constant, gnawing need for acceptance? The answer is simple. She realized she never needed permission to be herself. And once you grasp that truth, there's no going back. Number 9. She radiates competence, not just confidence. Confidence is easy to fake. Anyone can put on a bold front, speak a little louder, or throw in some assertive body language to appear self-assured. But competence, that's different. And that's exactly what sets a Sigma female apart. When she walks into a room, people don't just sense confidence, they feel her competence. She doesn't have to oversell herself or seek validation, because she knows deep down that she's capable. Whether it's in her work, her decisions, or the way she carries herself, there's no hesitation, no second guessing. She operates with a quiet, undeniable mastery, and that is what makes people stop and stare. Most people are conditioned to be either overly humble or overly boastful. They either downplay their skills to avoid seeming arrogant or exaggerate them to appear more impressive. But she does neither, she simply is. And that kind of presence unsettles people because it's rare. She doesn't just believe in herself, she knows she can handle whatever comes her way. She doesn't crumble under pressure because she's already tested herself. She doesn't need applause because her validation comes from results, not recognition. This makes her unpredictable in the best way. She doesn't need to prove anything, yet everything about her proves that she's more than capable. And people notice. They see it in the way she takes control of situations without forcing it, the way she stays composed while others scramble, the way she speaks with clarity, moves with certainty, and never seems out of her depth. She's not just putting on a show of confidence, she's living it, backed by skill, experience, and an unshakable sense of self. That kind of presence is magnetic. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. And in a world full of people faking it, someone who actually knows what they're doing is impossible to ignore. Number 10. She's unintentionally disruptive to the social order. Society thrives on predictability. People fall into their expected roles, follow unspoken rules, and maintain a certain social balance without even realizing it. The extroverts take the spotlight, the people-pleasers keep the peace, the dominant personalities lead, and the followers stay in line. It's an unspoken agreement that keeps things comfortable. Then, a Sigma female walks in, and without saying a word, she disrupts that entire dynamic. She doesn't seek to challenge anyone, yet her presence alone unsettles the usual hierarchy. She doesn't play the submissive role, but she also isn't aggressively dominant. She doesn't rush to seek approval, nor does she try to win over a room. She exists entirely on her own terms, and that throws people off. Because she doesn't follow the usual social script, others find themselves questioning their own roles. The loud, attention-seeking personalities realize they aren't the center of her world. The social butterflies notice she isn't trying to fit in. The ones used to being admired feel uneasy when she doesn't give them the usual validation. Without meaning to, she forces people to reevaluate themselves. She's a glitch in the system. Some admire her for it, drawn to her ability to move through life without needing constant social reinforcement. Others feel threatened, unsure how to react to someone who doesn't operate by the same unspoken rules. Either way, they notice her. And that's the paradox. She's not trying to disrupt anything. She's not chasing attention, rebelling for the sake of it, or making a scene. She's just being herself. But when you're surrounded by people who have unconsciously molded themselves to fit societal expectations, authenticity itself becomes a disruption. And that's why they stare. Because deep down, part of them wonders, what would it be like to live that free, her? Number 11. The reason they stare is the reason you stand out. People stare at Sigma females not just because they're different, but because they can't figure them out. They're used to people who seek validation, follow social scripts, or play predictable roles. But when they come across a woman who doesn't conform, doesn't explain herself, and doesn't need their approval, they don't know how to react. And that's a good thing. Because in a world that thrives on making people fit in, standing out without even trying is power. Sigma females don't demand attention, yet they command it. They don't seek to impress, yet they leave lasting impressions. They don't follow trends, yet people end up following them. Trying to understand, trying to mirror, trying to grasp what makes them so magnetic. But here's the truth. It's not something that can be copied. It's not a strategy. It's not an act. It's the natural result of living authentically, of refusing to be controlled by opinions, of cultivating real competence and self-sufficiency. So if you've ever felt like people are watching you, analyzing you, reacting to you in ways they don't with others, embrace it. It means you're operating on a different frequency, one that isn't ruled by insecurity or the need to conform. Let them stare, let them wonder, let them wrestle with the fact that you don't need their validation, yet you have their full attention anyway. Because at the end of the day, being truly free, mentally, emotionally, socially, is something most people only dream of. And when they see someone actually living it, they can't look away. Conclusion. People stare at Sigma females not just because they're different, but because they can't figure them out. They're used to people who seek validation, follow social scripts, or play predictable roles. But when they come across a woman who doesn't conform, doesn't explain herself, and doesn't need their approval, they don't know how to react. And that's a good thing. Because in a world that thrives on making people fit in, standing out without even trying is power. Sigma females don't demand attention, yet they command it. They don't seek to impress, yet they leave lasting impressions. They don't follow trends, yet people end up following them, trying to understand, trying to mirror, trying to grasp what makes them so magnetic. But here's the truth. It's not something that can be copied. It's not a strategy. It's not an act. It's the natural result of living authentically, of refusing to be controlled by opinions, of cultivating real competence and self-sufficiency. So if you've ever felt like people are watching you, analyzing you, reacting to you in ways they don't with others, embrace it. It means you're operating on a different frequency, one that isn't ruled by insecurity or the need to conform. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them wrestle with the fact that you don't need their validation, yet you have their full attention anyway. Because at the end of the day, being truly free, mentally, emotionally, socially, is something most people only dream of. And when they see someone actually living it, they can't look away. Thank you for watching The Rare Gems, and God bless you.